I'm Mark DeGroff, and I'm your president. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Today you have me for guest introductions in the Rotary Minute. We'll start with the Rotary Minute. First names or nicknames are a tradition worldwide for Rotary. From the earliest days of Rotary, members have referred to each other on a first name basis. Louder? Can you hear me now? We'll start over. First names or nicknames. From the earliest days of Rotary, members have referred to each other on a first name basis. Since personal acquaintanceship and friendship are cornerstones of Rotary, it was natural that many clubs adopted the practice of setting aside formal titles in conversations among members. Individuals who normally would be addressed as Doctor, Professor, Mr., the Honorable, or Sir are regularly called Joe, Bill, Charlie, or Jerry by other Rotarians. The characteristic Rotary Club name badge fosters the first name custom. In a few areas, such as Europe, club members use a more formal style in addressing fellow members. In other parts of the world, mainly in Asian countries, the practice is to assign each new Rotarian a humorous nickname which relates to some personal characteristic or which is descriptive of the member's business or profession. A member nicknamed Oxygen is the manufacturer of chemical gas products. Trees is the nickname of the Rotarian in the lumber business. Building is the contractor. Paper is the stationery or office supply retailer. Other members might carry nicknames like Muscles, Foghorn, or Smiles as commentaries on their physical features. The nicknames are frequently a source of good-natured fun and fellowship, but whether a Rotarian is addressed by a given first name or nickname, the spirit of personal friendship is the initial step which opens doors to all other opportunities for service. And your president is not open to a nickname. Thank you. That's your Rotary Minute. We have a number of guests today, and to remind everybody of our custom in introducing guests, we'll use Steve Knoll as an example. So I'll say, Steve Knoll is a guest of Dick Knoll, and then we all say, "Hi, Steve!" And then we'll clap and warmly welcome everyone as a guest at the end. And if you're a guest, please stand and remain standing when your name is called. Cindy Rogers is a guest of Chris McGee. Hi, Cindy! Mary McBride is a guest of Katie Brown. Hi, Mary. Bill Persinger is a guest of both Lucky DeFries and Frank Henderson. Hi, Bill. And a South Rotarian as well. Please stand, Bill. And Dale Wilson is a guest of Jeanette. Hi, Dale. Let's give them all a warm downtown Rotary welcome. Next up is Larry Goronsky with a quick announcement about Friend X and the exciting program that we've got coming up this year. Larry?
Gruff, the crime dog. That's your Rotarian Gruff. Our Friend X program has kicked off. This is what we need to do. Who is not familiar with it? Because I don't want to rewind and start at the beginning, but if you have not filled out your profile, if you want to participate in the program, we do have some of those profiles at the front. Please make sure you fill it out. It's a simple form that will you'll tell your friend X, your secret friend, you know, what your birthday is, what your anniversary is, what your hobbies and likes are, because when it's your birthday or your anniversary or something that you're being recognized for, your secret friend, your friend X, will be recognizing you with some form of, whether it's a token of appreciation, a letter, a card, a gift. And some of the gifts that we've talked about is that if you don't know what to get for your friend X, a gift to the Rotary Foundation is always good, because you as the donor will get the credit for it, the tax deduction, and your friend will get the celebration of that gift in their name. So it's a wonderful way that we think will help to build membership, not only retention, but give it some value. So if you have not filled out that profile, please do. Just to let you know, and I know Mike is here. Mike Cooner, would you stand? Mike is one of the coordinators, and also Susan Alexander These two folks are the ones who are coordinating the program, and because it's something that I did when I was president of the Vicksburg, Mississippi Rotary Club, it just seems to work out well. So they're going to be assigning your friend X's in the next week. And with that, we also know that in the last newsletter, we got whose birthdays and anniversaries were. So if you're on that Friend X program, you will be recognized. We're just going to catch up, and then it all culminates with a wonderful holiday thing we do in the end of December. You will find out who your secret friend was, and you'll be assigned a new friend. And it's just kind of nice to sit next to your friend X, and they don't even know who that is. So, any questions, CB, Mike, or Susan? Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. A couple more quick announcements, and then we'll get on to our program. Our January featured charity is Logan Elementary. Their mission statement is, the Logan Elementary School is for all students to learn in a safe and respectful environment with appropriate levels of instruction while developing a positive attitude for lifelong learning. Additionally, Linda asked me to put a request out for a printer for the office. I guess our printer went kaput. So if anybody has a printer that is still working, maybe it's on its last legs, it might be similar to the one that we had for a little while that served our club, but if anybody has one they'd like to donate, we would appreciate that. Also, we're going to ask you to RSVP for both the 117 lunch and the 124 lunch coming up. The 124 lunch you all have already paid for. There's no need to pay anything extra. We want to be in full support of the Greater Topeka efforts and our chamber efforts, and we know that many of you will be at that lunch on the 24th. We also are aware that it's difficult to get senators on our program schedule, and starting back in July, Stan approached Senator Moran's office, and the 24th was the only availability that he had. It's tough for them with the paid vacation that they get this time of year. Just kidding. But anyway, Senator Moran will be here. We want to fully support the Greater Topeka effort and that lunch. So if you're going to that lunch, great. If you can come to a small round table, it'll be a little bit more Q&A and a little different format than we typically have for programs. We just ask you to RSVP for the 24th so we don't buy 90 lunches and have 30 or 40 or 50 people show. And if you're also welcome to bring a guest if you'd like as well. So RSVP for your guest if you can make that. And this Monday at 4 p.m. at TPAC, we have a board meeting again as well. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Betty Morris, who will introduce our speaker today. Betty.
Good morning, everyone. I guess I should say almost good afternoon. Microphone. Okay. Oh, all right. Okay.
Better. Sorry.
Pardon me. Richard Ross has been a member of the Downtown Rotary since 1991, which means that I'm talking to people who know him quite well. But I'm hoping in the course of the introduction, I have learned a few things that I do about Richard, and perhaps you will too. Richard was selected to be, became a member of the Downtown Rotary, as I said, in 1991. And then he was selected to represent our district as a Rotary Friendship Exchange delegate to South Africa in March of last year. Richard grew up in Topeka and received his bachelor's degree in English and Political Science from Washburn University in 1971. In 1975, he received his Juris Doctorate degree from the Washburn Law School and began what was to be his life career with the Kansas Supreme Court. 2 years later, Richard became the reporter of decisions for the Kansas Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. He carried the reporter responsibility for 38 years and produced 182 volumes that carry his name. I'd like you to think about 182 volumes. It happens that a couple of years ago, I was on a tour of the Kansas Archives and my guide stopped in front of the shelving holding volumes of Kansas Supreme Court decisions. I still have the visual memory of looking at rows and rows of heavy volumes. Okay, 182 volumes carry his name. In addition to his work with the Kansas Supreme Court, Richard has been an active supporter of many organizations in our community and has received awards in appreciation for his work. I would like to mention 3 of them he has received during the past 2 years. In 1993, Richard created an art fair to provide financial support for the Mulvane Art Museum. It has been a big success and continues to be held annually the first week in June. In 2017, in appreciation for his creation of the fair and ongoing support as a member of the steering committee, the Mulvane surprised Richard by naming him to be the first recipient of an award that carries his name. It is the Richard Ross Mountain Plains Award. Undoubtedly, some of you know Richard and have gone to the art fair, but now you know that he was the creator of the fair. In 2017, Richard received the Washburn University Distinguished Alumni Award. In this past June, he received the Topeka West High School Distinguished Graduate Hall of Fame Award. In Rotary, Richard is a Paul Harris Fellow and also a Henry Blake Fellow. He served as the Vice President of the Downtown Topeka Rotary Foundation. He also hosted a Rotary exchange student from Italy. The exchange student's name was Claudio, and they continued to communicate often. Richard, we look forward to learning about your experience as a Rotary Friendship Delegate to South Africa.
Betty, thank you very much for that introduction. I first would like to introduce my guest. It's my daughter, Kristen Ross. She is a copywriter at Advisors Excel, and I've given her a duty today when she walked in. First, to pin on my name tag, which I will explain in a minute, and also to let me know when I'm approaching 1 o'clock so we don't run over. My name tag was given to me by one of the Rotary clubs that I visited in South Africa. South Africa is known for its very large, and probably the largest in the world, ostrich farms. And that particular Rotary club gave all of the guests, the Rotarians that visited, a name tag that is made from an ostrich shell, and it's also an ostrich feather. So it's a very, very substantial shell. In fact, when we went to one of the ostrich farms, we were able to stand on 2 of the shells and have our pictures taken, and the shells did not break. Very thick shells. Several weeks ago, at one of our Rotary meetings, William Butetta explained in the Rotary Minute what a friendship exchange was. And I'm here to let you know that it is a wonderful experience. The Rotary Exchange program is not through the International Rotary Club. It has to be between 2 particular districts. They're the ones that organize it, and they're the ones that fund it. Individuals, in particular, fund their own trips. It's not money through the Rotary. Several years ago, the district governor of our club, our district, 5710, met with, at an international conference, met with the district governor of Club 9350, which is in South Africa. And that club is one of the largest clubs in the world as far as size of land. It incorporates much of, at least more than half of South Africa, which is about twice the size of Texas. And it also includes the entire country of Namibia and also Angola. So that club district governor has to travel about 2,500 miles just to visit all the clubs in her district, and she did it twice a year. I heard about the Rotary Friendship Exchange just like many of you did. I received an email from our district one day in October saying that there was a potential opportunity for a friendship exchange with South Africa's district, and it was a first come, first served opportunity. I was in my car backing out of my garage on my way to visit my son in Colorado. My email dinged on my phone. I wasn't on the highway, so I could look at my phone and read my email, and I saw that opportunity. So I stopped the car, I went inside, I got on the computer, and I wrote the district office and said I was interested. And then I didn't hear anything for about a month, and all of a sudden I received an email telling me that a meeting on a program called Zoom, Z-O-O-M, would be starting the following week, and I was one of the participants. Well, that was for people who were interested in going. It turned out that there were 13 individuals from our Rotary district who went. I was the only Topeka. There were representatives from Manhattan, Marysville, Lawrence, and the Kansas City area. And one of the Kansas City Lenexa Rotarians was designated as our leader. And we met monthly through the internet on Zoom program. And until I got in Cape Town, South Africa, I had never met any of the other Kansas Rotarians. Like I said, there were 13 of us. That included 4 couples. The Rotary Exchange Program allows different clubs and different districts to get to know each other, to see a different part of the world, to develop new friendships, and that's exactly what this one did. So my program today is to give you a little introduction of what that friendship exchange was like, and I would say more than a third of the experience involved going to Rotary service projects. I stayed with 5 different Rotary host families, and I stayed at another lodge that was owned by a host family, and then we spent one day on a safari. I did stay another 5 days after the program ended, and I went on my own safari for 3 days and spent nearly 2 days in Johannesburg before I came home. It's a 2-day travel time to get to and from South Africa, so 4 days of my trip involved travel, just getting to Cape Town and back home. It worked before.
It did work before. Now, hold on, I'm sorry. Locked up.
What you will see is, when we get this on, I'm arriving in Cape Town. That's where we start. Oops. Okay. And the first thing I saw when I got off the plane and into the area was the Rotary symbol. And I found out that throughout South Africa, at least throughout the trip that I took, the Rotarians had their symbol everywhere. We don't see that so much in the United States, at least I haven't, but I was amazed how often you saw that Rotary wheel. They're very proud of presenting that, and I think that maybe we should think about doing that too. It's very, very visible, and people do know about Rotary partly through that. Some of you may remember that last year, South Africa, and particularly Cape Town, was under a water shortage. That was the largest city in the world that was facing such a shortage. And right before I went, they were announcing, every week they give an announcement of which day they would shut off the water to the 4.5 million people in Cape Town. They kept extending it, but they had instituted different ways for the citizens to save water. And that included in Cape Town that you took it started out 2-minute showers, they lowered that to 90 seconds. You put a bucket in the shower to collect excess water that was used when you flush the toilet to put it into the tank so you didn't use city water to fill up the tank. And the only place I had to do that was in Cape Town the last 3 days I was there. But because of what people did to save water, they didn't have to ever shut off water supply to the city. Now they're saying August of this year, but they did get some rain finally. They hadn't had good rains for a couple of years. But it's a semi-arid country in many parts of the country, and they're used to some droughts, but this was very significant. And I think it foretells something for all of us. Conserve water. It's a very valuable and necessary resource, and we should all think about that. I don't take 90-second showers, but I am aware of trying to conserve water. My first stay was in Somerset West, and I stayed with the district governor. That's the district governor, Lynette Stassen, and that's her home, and her husband is an attorney. They both are retired. She was an engineer. She was one of the first women engineers in South Africa to be a leader in a major firm. And this home was quite large, and it was built around, it was surrounded by olive trees, and they were harvesting the olives when I was there. Right after I arrived, like a day after, we had a gathering down the street at a clubhouse. And this was for all the Kansas Rotarians and their hosts, as well as members of some other clubs, and there were 5 other clubs represented. And we had a very light dinner and drinks and just a way to get acquainted with each other. And then the 5 Rotarian presidents got up to welcome us. And the first one that got up started out by saying, and they had our bios. We didn't have their bios, but they knew somewhat where we were from and something about us. So the first man got up, and his first words were, "Well, I'm not from South Africa. I was born and raised in Topeka, Kansas. I graduated from Topeka High School." And his name was Frank Freeman. He traveled the world for many years, singing on Andrew Lloyd Webber productions worldwide. And then he was on cruise ships as the entertainment. His brother, Glenn Freeman, still lives in Topeka, and Glenn is married to Mary Loftus. So I knew Mary fairly well, so this is quite an introduction to my time in this little tiny town. But he settled in Somerset West, became a Rotarian, became president, and that was my introduction to that country. This is our group. We did a lot of touring, but much of it had to do with Rotarian activities. But we were welcomed in this little town, and it was a significant historic place because that's where Nelson Mandela in 1994 met with government officials to finalize the abolishment of apartheid. Lynette Stassen's husband is Koos, K-O-O-S. It's pronounced Quiz. He was a brilliant authority on almost everything, and he made an excellent tour guide. So we traveled around by bus, and he provided a lot of historic information and other information to us. One of the things that I found quite interesting on my trip is that we visited at least 11 different service projects put on by the different clubs. And almost all of them were education related. These clubs were average size 18 to 25 members, very small clubs compared to Manhattan's 200 and Lawrence's 200 and our club's 180 to 200. These very small clubs were extremely active in their projects, their service projects. And many of them actually built and have helped supply preschools throughout their district. And these are for very poor children, and they want education is such an important part of their focus, and they're trying to get them a little head start when they start going to school. In South Africa, they designate, this is just normal language, they designate their ethnic groups as black, colored, and white, and then they have an Indian Asian. But it's, they're not segregated per se, but there's like many of the blacks are the ones that work in the farms, and they're the poorest, even though that's 80% of the country are of that race. But the children are, in some areas, are quite disadvantaged. So Rotarians have built these preschools, and we visited many of them. So what we see here is 3 different areas of service projects. The bottom one has to do with dentistry, and they didn't build a dental office, but they helped provide supplies for that dental office. Again, all of these are for children who are very disadvantaged as far as income. We were in the wine country, so we had a lot of wine actually all the time. The Rotarians did like to drink their wine, but we visited a winery. This was owned by this lady who was president of her Rotary Club. Beautiful site, and she and her husband built, it wasn't Rotarians, but she built this preschool for her workers, but the Rotarians helped out with planting trees and landscaping around this preschool. Another Rotarian, he hosted all of us at his lodge. He had a very expansive landmass with mountains and gorgeous vistas. And he had a restaurant downtown, so he treated us to his restaurant, and then we stayed at his lodge. This is his lodge. This is the view I had in the morning when I woke up. This is also part of the lodge, and in a barn, a very rustic barn, they had this gorgeous setting for a dinner, and we had a young woman who was blind who sang opera to us. And he had heard her at one time, and when she was in high school, and he provided her college education so she could study her music, and she entertained us. This was one of my Rotary hosts. I thought this was an interesting picture. It says at the top, Rotary Park, and we knew we were going to the Rotary Park and assumed, like probably most of you would, that this is a green space with trees. No, the Rotary Park was built by this Rotary Club. It's quite large. It's a retirement community. It's homes, and they run this. and they get the proceeds from this. It's quite large. Consequently, they do have their own spot in the building where they can have their Rotary banners displayed, and you can see how many different clubs around the world have visited there, and they now have one from our club. The house I stayed in, the picture on the left is I took from my bedroom window. Gorgeous. The picture on the right is called a Brai, B-R-A-I. We went to at least 4 of those. They're a barbecue. That's what they call them, Brais, and they go to Brais all the time. They were quite well adapted to that, and everything was cooked on a grill, and people brought food to share. That particular club did several things in service projects. It was the preschool, but also the picture on the right, they purchased sewing machines and set up shops to teach women how to create things that they now sell. And so it's kind of like a little shop there. They make these bags, and Making a Difference bags called MAD, M-A-D, MAD bags. This is the safari we went on. It was a morning and evening safari ride, and it was a lot of fun to see animals in the wild. Of course, South Africa is the southern part of Africa, so we're on the coast, and this is the southern coast where you can see on the sign another Rotary symbol. Rotarians are doing something everywhere. In this case, they're helping clean up the beach, and they let it be known that their club is participating. There's the ostrich farm I talked about. I am wearing an ostrich leather belt. It didn't cost nearly as much as Manafort's ostrich jacket, but we did go to some shops where everything that was there was made of ostrich leather. Women's handbags were quite expensive and jackets were expensive, but my belt was affordable to me. There at the bottom, you can see us standing on the 2 ostrich eggs. Another bride, this time we're having some ostrich burgers. Here we are at another, the Rotary Club actually built this building for the preschool. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's very arid, it's very dry, but it was a very nice facility. And we helped plant some trees. And this particular tree, I can't think of the name of the tree. It's the most ecological, it's spec-boom. It's a tree that grows fast. It grows in arid country, but it also absorbs more carbon than any other tree in the world. So they talk about these trees being very helpful for climate change, or at least removing carbon from the atmosphere. These are pictures of different Rotary service projects by this little tiny club. One of them is a vocational center where Rotarians themselves do the teaching. The young man is learning how to repair bicycles. They have a wood shop there. They have a sewing shop there. You can see the donkeys. This was a donkey refuge where donkeys that have been found around the country that are being abused, or they're neglected or whatever. This is a sanctuary, and Rotarians helped set that up. Another thing this particular Rotary Club did was to build a baboon-proof booth around a playground so that the baboons didn't scare the children. Our club should try that. Visited the Penguins. My daughter's giving me the 5-minute sign, so I'll speak. We went to Soweto. The Rotary Club, it was a very poor district and very large, but they had a very large and very nice school, and Rotarians paid for and do the upkeep on about 40 different computers in the computer center. Down at the bottom, you can see the names of 3 Rotary clubs. This is something that I observed throughout my visit. Rotary clubs from around the world contribute to these different service projects. I was just amazed, and I know when people go to the International Rotary Conventions, they see some of this. This was my first experience to see how much can be done by so many contributions, smaller amounts, by so many individuals working together. And this is what made me feel like Rotary was truly international, to see the cooperation of so many clubs working together. One of the world's greatest botanical gardens is here. This one is over 100 years old. And at the top, someone observed that there was a plant named Richard, so I had to have my picture taken with the Richard plant. Cape of Good Hope and Cape Point. This Cape Point is where the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean fused. Table Mountain, this is above Cape Town. It's one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. It has over 85,000 different species of plants, many of them just on that mountain, no place else in the world. And it's a remarkable place. We spent a couple of hours there. You can hike up to the top if you want. It's about a 4-hour hike, or you can take the gondola, which is what we took. While we were there, the clouds came in, and we were above the clouds. It made its own weather. It's so high and so broad. And I did make it through. All right. I just want to say that this was an excellent experience. I've made new friends. In fact, today I received an email from the district governor from Cape Town. The plan was for that district to send delegates to Kansas in 2019, but that's been changed because many of them want to go to Hamburg to the international convention. So they are going to come in 2020. I'll be on the planning team for that. I hope that I get cooperation and help from people here to set it up. They were so welcoming in South Africa to our delegation, and I certainly want to show them a good time when they're here. Thank you for your attention, and that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Richard. As you know, we ask speakers to sign the bookplate in a book, and then we donate that to Ross Elementary School. This is Fly Guy and the Alien, so in your honor, we'd like to donate that to Ross Elementary. Please sign that for us. Richard mentioned also that he will stay and take questions after lunch. Next week's meeting is at TCALC. It's the Topeka Center for Advanced Learning and Careers. Please register if you have not already for that lunch if you plan on attending. And Linda and our group will send out an email with the address on there. So if you have not been to that building before, we'll send the address out to you as well. Our service project was recently hosted by the Morrisons. So please give Dr. Grace Morrison, our past president, and her husband Mike Morrison, who's a South Rotarian, a warm round of applause and a thank you. They hosted a social earlier this week to prep blankets, and at next week's meeting we'll tie those. So please come. It's going to be a fun meeting and a fun networking event. And we'll tie blankets for the Fresh Start kits for human trafficking that we're working on with Patty Millard and South Topeka Rotary in our district. So with that said, we'll rise and say the 4 and a halfway test. Thank you. Of the things we think, say, or do, is the truth, is fair to all concerned, will build goodwill and better friendships, will be beneficial to all concerned, and is it fun? Thank you.